Cry Wilderness is one of those 80s creature feel-good movies that were so typical of the time. It's just now we're dealing with Bigfoot. Unfortunately, this film is probably most well known for being riffed on Mystery Science Theater, which, for the movie's sake, is never a good thing. First, we meet our main character, Paul. He is infatuated with this missing link exhibit at a museum, so much so that he gets separated from the rest of his group, where his teacher finds him. Paul tells him how he's actually met Bigfoot, even gave him some candy and Coke, and in return, Bigfoot gave him a strange rock. Naturally, his teacher doesn't believe a word he says. Later that night, Paul is woken up by his furry friend outside his window. Yeah, I wish that would happen to me. Bigfoot warns him that his father's in great danger, so Paul leaves the school that second. He hitchhikes his way up a mountain to his dad, who is a park ranger. Luckily, it's the 80s, and there's no serial killers or anything for a little kid to worry about, so he gets a ride from a truck driver. Somehow, he makes it to the woods alive, and eventually to his dad, who is happy to see him, but doesn't believe that Bigfoot told Paul he was in grave danger. To be honest, I don't know if I believe it at this point. First thing Monday morning, he's going back to school, but it must be a long weekend or something because he spends the next several days with his dad. His dad, whose name is Will by the way, is working with Jim to track down and tranquilize an escaped tiger. There's also this resort opening up in town, so they need to keep the guests safe. The resort owner calls in Morgan Hicks, a U.S. Marshal, to join them, but he doesn't care if the tiger's dead or alive. So that's all fine and good. The three men and Paul set out to find the tiger, who at this point is more elusive than Bigfoot. Eventually they come to a waterfall, which is where Paul met the big guy last summer. They see the Coke cans all scattered about, and I have to say, no wonder Bigfoot's been crying into the wilderness. His teeth are all rotted. Eventually they track the tiger to a stream, but Morgan finds something more interesting, a rather large footprint. Now he starts to believe Paul's story and loses interest in the tiger, wanting a much bigger prize. The situation is pretty serious and Will can't take any chances, so he asks Jim to take Paul to the bus station. Paul escapes and runs away to a lake, where we meet Red Hawk, a tribe elder who is supposed to be dead. He explains that after 7 days he woke up in the grave, escaped, and has lived with the animals ever since. Okay, sure. Red Hawk explains to Paul that he needs to find Bigfoot, get him out of the woods, and into the mountains to be safe from Morgan. Then shows him a path so he can escape from Jim. Real responsible, that Red Hawk. Anyway, it all builds up to a big finale in a mine shaft. Will is hunting the tiger, Jim is looking for Paul, and Paul and Morgan are looking for Bigfoot. Will does his job. He shoots the tiger and gets it with a tranquilizer, so that problem's dealt with. Paul wanders around outside and sees Bigfoot. He tells him that he's in danger and he needs to move to the mountains, which is what he does. Paul goes back into the mine and sees his dad, but just then there's a cave-in. The rocks fall on Will and Paul can't get his dad free. But Bigfoot can. The beast saves Will before anyone even sees him and escapes outside. But Morgan sees the footprints and chases after his trophy. Eventually he finds the creature, but he's guarded by Red Hawk and Paul. The rock Bigfoot gave to Paul lights up bright and an eagle attacks Morgan, blinding him. And everyone else lives happily ever after. Back at school, Paul's teacher tells him seriously that the school doesn't believe in fairy tales. But he does. His mood changes and he asks Paul if he would introduce him to his hairy friend. But even Paul doesn't know where he is now. But if you truly believe, it doesn't matter how old you are, you will see him. Then they open the door and there he is. So is the school some sort of portal for Bigfoot? Is that how he was able to show up on the front lawn to warn Paul in the first place? I doubt it. I think they just needed some way to end this thing. But some final thoughts on Cry Wilderness. The story was just okay. It's written to be more of a kid's movie. There's definitely no blood and guts here. And that's fine. I wasn't expecting that. But I was expecting something to happen. Most of this movie is just guys wandering around in the woods, with different shots of animals cut in. Technically, there's also a lot of issues. Just about every line Will says is dubbed over badly.
I wish there was a Bigfoot, so I could strangle him.
And there's a fight scene where Jim fights a bear. You can clearly see the camera in the shot. If you're looking for a movie to watch with the kids, I mean, this would work, but there are far better ones out there. I recommend watching the MST3K version and call it a night. I give Cry Wilderness 1.5 little kid hitchhikers out of 4.
Your father is in great danger, Paul.